Opposing Viewpoints series, White Collar Crime, Book 3, Can Trade Secrets Be Stolen? Chapter Preface. Like banks, post offices, and the corner Dollar General, ideas can be robbed. When they are, it's called trade secret theft, a concept that dates to a number of court cases that began to show up in the mid-19th century. By then, the early industrial era had begun. The economies of many of those countries were dominated in ways of making things and new marketplaces for those things to be bought and sold. The people behind these new ways of doing things generally believed that what they developed gave them a competitive advantage in these new marketplaces and endeavored to protect those ideas from being used by anybody else. The idea has since stuck, and these so-called secrets have grown to include everything from the formula for Coca-Cola to reams of customer lists that can conveniently fit on the attachment to an email. Companies say that these are the things that make their products and business operations special, and they frequently use the legal system to protect them. But trade secret theft is also a crime potentially punishable with jail time. Over the last decade, tech companies have been increasingly willing to turn over their documents to federal prosecutors in order to show them to use the legal system to inflict punishments on disloyal former employees. The trade secret theft has increasingly become a forum for expressing geopolitical frustrations, with suspicion of economic espionage doled out to foreigners over anxieties about where their true loyalty lies. The U.S.-China Initiative, a Justice Department program that lasted from November 2018 to February 2022, and which subjected Chinese Americans and Chinese citizens legally residing in the U.S. to investigations of industrial espionage, is one such example. The viewpoints in this chapter look at both the legal structure of how trade secrets are protected by the law, as well as a number of notable instances of attempts to use those laws and others similar to them against alleged trade secret thieves. This chapter will also examine some of the more contentious applications of these laws, from recent moves to Silicon Valley to the Justice Department's notorious China Initiative project. So, not going to read this whole chapter, but I am going to skim through it from page 97 to 117. Viewpoint 1 discussed what are trade secrets, and trade secret theft is defined in the Uniform Trade Secret Act, written in 1979, adopted in 48 states. According to Justia, it sounds like misappropriation is part of the is a element of the crime. What's quoted here is, if a person or entity discloses or publishes a trade secret while knowing it was improperly obtained, or by inducing someone to improperly obtain it, misappropriation exists. So let's move on. Misappropriation is somewhat defined here, but let's first go with trade secret, defined again by UTSA. A trade secret is defined as information that confers a competitive advantage, economic advantage. Information that confers a competitive economic advantage over competitors that is the subject of reasonable efforts to keep it secret. And if a trade secret owner does not make reasonable efforts to keep the information secret, it will no longer be a trade secret. So the trade secret infringement is called misappropriation, occurring when someone improperly acquires a trade secret or improperly discloses or uses a trade secret without consent, or having reason to know that knowledge of trade secret was acquired through a mistake or accident. Misappropriation need not be intentional. It can happen inadvertently through negligence. Now, misappropriation also occurs when someone discloses or uses a trade secret without consent, when at the time of disclosure he or she had reason to know the knowledge of the trade secret was either derived from someone who obtained it through improper means, obtained under circumstances that gave rise to maintain its secrecy or limit its use, or derived through a person who owed a duty of confidentiality to the trade secret owner. So, they next define what's improperly acquiring of a trade secret. Some examples, like having unsecured private laptop in a public place, and running an online website for an employee of a major corporation breaches a non-disclosure agreement to give their formula for a soft drink, may be liable. Decrypting and publishing manufacturing processes. So how do you defend misappropriation is the next section. So you have to prove actual independent development of the information. That's an affirmative defense in my mind. And then you will use your own files and records to show that actual independent development. There's a defense of reverse engineering. For instance, like you replicated Coca-Cola, but you didn't actually steal the trade secret. But the defense can be problematic because we're talking sometimes about software with end user licensing agreements. And another strong defense is to attack the plaintiff's efforts to keep the information secret, right? If they have not defended their trade secret, if they have not taken reasonable efforts to keep the information secret. Allowing open public access to one's offices, for example, would be against reasonable efforts at secrecy, or something's already saved in a public domain. You can also defend on the grounds that information that is supposedly secret is actually public, say for instance by producing patents, articles, or books from which the trade secret information is readily ascertainable or revealed. You should be aware this defense that unique combinations of publicly known concepts and ideas may consider a trade secret. Tools of the trade. So the next Viewpoint 2 is titled How the U.S. Government Tackles Trade Secrets from China by Todd A. Pickles. One relevant quote here is, those who believe they are victims of trade secret theft by actors linked to China may, in addition to civil litigation, find a receptive audience with the DOJ, the Department of Justice. And I'm just talking about some initiatives since published to the DOJ's website in May of 2021. We were talking about the China initiative, for example, particularly the DOJ's National Security Division. Probably all been dismantled since then, but I'm kidding. I don't know. There was an example here. In February 2021, the DOJ announced that a Chinese national residing in Hong Kong was indicted for conspiring to steal trade secrets from a prominent American manufacturer regarding the company's silicon carbonate technology. The case filed in New York was a result of FBI investigation, including its counterintelligence unit as well as the NSD. Again, stands for the National Security Division, and the United States Attorney's Office for the Northern District of New York. And in announcing the charges, Assistant Attorney General Demers stated, theft of American intellectual property for the benefit of foreign firms deprives American companies of the fruits of their creativity and American workers of their jobs. The department will do all it can to disrupt this illegal and economically destructive conduct. Another example of stealing valuable trade secrets related to formulations for bisphenol A-free, BPA-free coatings for the inside of beverage cans. We need that. So, the State Administration of Foreign Export Affairs and the National Natural Science Foundation of China is alleged to have received benefits from the Chinese government procured from perhaps crimes like these. There's bipartisan legislation called the U.S. Innovation and Competition Act of 2021. Good to look into. And among other things, if enacted, would require the State Department in consultation with the DOJ, the Commerce Department, and the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative and the Director of National Intelligence to develop a list of Chinese state-owned enterprises that have benefited from intellectual property theft, would allow the State Department to determine aliens are inadmissible for entry by considering if their employer is involved in theft or intellectual property, and will require the Treasury Department in evaluating whether Chinese companies listed on U.S. exchanges poses an unreasonable risk to U.S. capital markets, to consider if an entity has, quote, engaged in an act or series of acts of intellectual property theft. And so it's a bill proposed at the time of 2021. I think it did get attributed to Biden. There are a lot of big names of probably Amicus Curie, and let's say State Department, DOJ we know, Commerce Department, Commerce Department, U.S. Trade Representative, thanks. So it's the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative, the Director of National Intelligence. I knew this section was going to be really enlightening as to the degree that the government is interested in protecting trade secrets. So Viewpoint 3 is how trade secret theft is prosecuted. There's an example. Well, the writer is the Federal Bureau of Investigation, talking about a former employee of GE. Quoting here, protecting the investments and innovations of American companies is important to the FBI. So this looks kind of like a case study from the FBI's Albany field office regarding this Miguel Cernas, former GE employee. It looks like they took over the case in 2017, sifting through mounds of digital and physical evidence to help a team of forensic specialists, intelligence analysts, prosecutors, FBI legal attaches and partner agencies. And talking about his background. Well, what did he do? Okay, so he was an employee of the IT department, granted him access to files he had no legitimate reason to see. Those files contained the proposals and cost models GE used to bid on new work and contracts, and he had court documents show he collected more than 8,000 files. They learned about this, the company that is FBI investigated the federal law by stealing a trade secret, right? That's the charge. How they stopped him. And other evidence uncovered is calculations over email of uploading these to cloud storage accounts. He also pled guilty to conspiracy to steal trade secrets and scheduled to be sentenced in the next couple of months, according to federal sentencing guidelines. The case shows how the FBI continues to work every day, even if it takes several years to hold criminals accountable for their actions. Funny statement. Oh, here's a new word, captagon, which is discussing nonprofit organizations, illicit trade of commodities such as oil, charcoal, diamonds, gold, and the narcotic heptagon in digital currencies. So how financial crime supports a violent crime is where this is coming from. All right, finance terrorism, funding for low-level fraud, kidnapping for ransom, misuse of nonprofit organizations, the illicit trade of commodities. This can flow to terrorist organizations that conduct attacks, specifically financing travel of family members and others to conflict zones, with cash, for example. Interpol published a red notice for the suspect who was subsequently arrested in another previously unconnected member country and extradited for prosecution. This is coming from a Tracing Terrorist Finances Interpol article. They probably have a lot of really interesting articles. Oh, Lewandowski here, who is a 39-year-old, is one of the founding figures of the ongoing race to build autonomous cars. And Lewandowski left Google and made his way to Uber, which was trying to build autonomous cars of its own. In the weeks after his departure, he downloaded about 14,000 files, including some Google hardware schematics, and transferred those files to external drive, wiped his laptop clean. The actual files have been hotly debated. The Google engineer dismissed them as low-value information, and there was sufficient pretense for Google to file a $1.85 billion lawsuit against Uber for stolen trade secrets. It did captivate Silicon Valley, which is why I know the name of the guy. Uber stock affected a bit, $250 million. Settlement established an independent software expert to review their Uber's autonomous driving technology to ensure that none of Google's proprietary information was user replicated. He asserted his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination when asked virtually any questions, even though he was indicted by the grand jury on 33 counts of theft and attempted theft of trade secrets. If convicted, he'd face 10 years and $250,000 restitution, which is somewhere around $1.5 billion. But in 1996, U.S. citizens aren't to be prosecuted for such crimes, but in 1996, Congress, in an attempt to combat the foreign theft of American intellectual property, passed the Economic Espionage Act, which made it easier for federal government to pursue anyone who stole corporate secrets. So this is the Economic Espionage Act. A lot of discussion of PR and Google and defining trade secret. Engineers being concerned about this. Reddit gets pulled in. One posted on Reddit, you constantly become a target. Something experimental that company X is working on shows up in company Y's final project. Who are they immediately going to point the finger at? It's talking about how Lewandowski had to pay. Parents had to pay. And that's something I actually wanted to read about, and concludes book 3 on Can Trade Secrets Be Stolen?